A report from Jake Fisher and Yahoo Sports says Goga Bitadze, most likely Pacer big to get traded. We'll cut through that, what it means, and some news on Daniel Theis, where he's at in his recovery process before Rylan Stiles from Locked On Thunder joins us to preview Pacers Thunder tonight and talk team building from a team doing it in one of the most unique ways in the league. Lots coming today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, talking a little backup center action, diving into some reporting from Jake Fisher in Yahoo Sports about Goga Bitadze and potentially being in the trade whirlwind this trade season, as well as Daniel Theis. And not necessarily trade stuff reported for him, but he's in the report. We'll talk about both of those guys, with Goga Bitadze being named the most likely Pacer to get big, per Jake Fisher. Talk about that, talk about Theis, and then Rylan Stiles from Locked On Thunder will join us, and we talk for about 25 minutes about both the Pacers-Thunder game tonight and team building in general. What have the Thunder done well to be on the rise, surprising, very good, and have every draft pick under the sun for the next 7 drafts? A lot of unique stuff from OKC. Rylan and I cut through it all. We'll start with, though, this report in Yahoo Sports from Jake Fisher, like I already said, and there's a lot to this. Some of it's stuff that has been loosely reported by others. He gets into more specifics on things like Miles Turner and Chris Duarte and contract extensions and all this sorts of stuff about what the Pacers are potentially thinking ahead of their deadline. That said, this was pre-Halliburton injury. It came out, I think, the day that he got injured, and it even says in there things could change based on Halliburton's injury status. So not digging too much into anything, honestly, at this stage until I get more details from more people. But I would like to talk about one line of this because I don't think this is the part of this that I think is the least related to Halliburton or the Pacers' success level status this year. And that is the very last paragraph on the Pacers section. Again, this is in Yahoo Sports from Jake Fisher. And I'll just read the whole paragraph verbatim and then talk about it. It says, quote, Indiana's center most likely to be traded is fourth-year big man Goga Bitadze. If an opportunity arises, the Pacers will be willing to work in tandem with Bitadze's representation to find him a new team, sources said, especially with Daniel Theis on track to return in the next few weeks. Bitadze has seen limited playing time and has been uninterested in joining Indiana's G League outfit in Fort Wayne. So, let's cut through this. Goga Bitadze, most likely Pacer big to be traded over Miles Turner. Interesting, right? I don't know that I don't know anything ever. I never know anything. I will be very careful with wording forever and ever when talking about trade stuff. But this isn't surprising, I would say, right? Like this year, Goga has played in 19 games, right? That's less than half of the Pacers' total games. He has played in over 15 minutes in a game. I want to say twice since Halloween, right? Like if you, yeah, that's exactly right. Over 15 minutes twice since Halloween. Once was against the Knicks last week and once earlier in November, right? He just doesn't play. He's not a person in the mix for the Pacers any night anymore, right? And that's just the reality of his situation. That's the reality of the Pacers situation. They don't have minutes for him. Turner's going to start. They promised Jalen Smith the starting spot. And Isaiah Jackson is totally worthy of minutes with his athleticism and skill. It's very hard to get Bitadze on the floor. And so they don't have minutes for him at all. And they might have even fewer if Theis returns, right? Like they just don't. Terry Taylor is a natural center to me right now. Like they just don't have a way to get Goga into the game, right? So it's very tricky to actually play him. This is of no fault of the Pacers right now. Well, let me rephrase that. They picked or traded for all of the bigs. It's not. It is their fault. But no one is blaming them for what they're doing rotation-wise. But it makes sense that Bitadze getting to a situation that makes more sense for him would be something that happened, right? He doesn't really play. They have a lot of other bigs, and his whole career's kind of been like this, right? Drafted behind Sabonis, sits behind them for 2.5 years, finally plays pretty well the back half of last season when he finally gets minutes when he's healthy, only for Isaiah Jackson and for Jalen Smith also to play well at the same time, and then Turner returns from injury, and all of a sudden he's back to square one, basically being the third, fourth big, not being in that rotation. And if Theis returns, then they truly do want to play Daniel Theis over him at times. As this doesn't say that, but it just mentions Daniel Theis being on track to return. It could be even less opportunity. So it makes a lot of sense, right? And the zoom out perspective from a lot of trade stuff for the Pacers is There are 500 team right now. There's one game over that, whatever. They're a 500 team right now. If you're on an expiring contract on a 500 team, you're probably a trade candidate to some extent, right? And so I'm not saying that any particular Pacers player is, but there's been a lot of chatter about Miles Turner and his contract being expiring is a huge factor in that. O'Shea Brissett's on an expiring deal. I have nothing there, but it would make sense if they said, you know what, we might lose this guy for nothing. And Goga is on an expiring deal. Now, they could have restricted free agency to keep him, but given their center situation, given that he would probably like to play actual basketball games and not sit on the bench as much, right? There may not be as much of a mutual interest in free agency, even if it is restricted. But the fact that he's on an expiring contract just adds even more to the fire in this situation. So it makes a lot of sense that, like this mentions, that the representation for Bitadze and the Pacers would work together. Like, it just seems like if a team said, "Hey, we'll take him," and the Pacers could trade him for nothing, basically, that would be something that is amenable to both sides, just so that he could play more and the Pacers could have some more flexibility. But that is just reading the tea leaves of the situation and everything going on in that. I don't know any of that myself, but the reporting does make all the sense in the world. So we'll see where that ends up going. But I mean, you can figure out with the contract situations and the playing time why that makes sense. And the Theis part of it, of course, interesting as well, right? We recently have seen him back on the floor. Like, we can go into practice in the media portion and see like who's still doing stuff or who's in the weight room and stuff. And like last week, Theis was back on the court in Pacers stuff. It was usually sweats or something else as he was rehabbing from knee surgery, and now it's not them, right? He looks like he's actually doing stuff at practice. Rick Carlisle said, hey, he's running, right, and able to do stuff. I don't know how much 5-on-5, whatever level of thing you want to say he's doing, but certainly closer to some sort of return, whatever form of return you think is necessary for Theis to be back on the floor. So he is improving in that way, right? We could see him doing all that stuff. If you look at the Pacers social team posting like pictures of practices and stuff, you can see him in like a penny, right? He is practicing. He is one of the guys with them. I don't know if he's doing everything, if he's doing nothing or whatever, but getting closer to a return. And like Bitadze, you're not sure if you would play, right? You definitely wouldn't play him instead of Turner, and I would play any young big over Daniel Theis, but you'd prefer to have him than not. That's always been my tune with him, and not everybody, but a lot of people ask me, hey, will he ever play for the Pacers? I don't know. He likely has more value to other teams than the Pacers, certainly, but having more depth is preferable to not, especially if that guy's already on your team and already getting paid to play. So maybe he can return in like late January, early February. That's just made up. I have no idea if he actually can. And then play like 2 games, prove he's healthy, and be a trade candidate himself. Maybe the Pacers actually like want a veteran depth big. I don't know. But in terms of talking about the backup centers, I wanted to include him as well, both because he's included in this paragraph from Jake Fisher and because it matters in the sense of the Pacers reserve big man depth. So haven't talked about Bitadze or Theis much. Neither of them have played that often. Theis not at all. But both got mentioned there. Both in the news for different reasons, and because this is a time to do it, I wanted to update you all on both Goga Bitadze's reported situation with the team long term and Theis's recovery status. Now it's time to talk some Pacers Thunder. 2 nights in OKC, which would have been such a fun game. A battle of 2 most improved player candidates in Tyrese Halliburton and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Shai's going to win that award. He's going to run away with it. But either way, it would have been a fantastically awesome game, and it still will be fun. Thunder are surging. Pacers desperate for a win. What will give in this game? Rylan Stiles from Locked on Thunder is going to join, and we're going to talk about it all. The Thunder strengths and weaknesses, the Pacers, and we'll talk team building, right? What did the Thunder do so well to build the team they have? Is it replicatable by any other franchise? All sorts of fun stuff. Before that happens, though, let me talk to you guys about Rocket Money. If your New Year's goal is to manage your budget better or save money, you need Rocket Money. Say goodbye to last year's outdated, disorganized methods of managing your money. Say hello to Rocket Money, the better way to hack your finances in 2023. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. It's quick and easy to identify your subscriptions, and Rocket Money does that for you. And they'll cancel the ones you don't want so you can stop paying for them. It makes canceling subscriptions as easy as a click of a button. Find the one you don't want, press cancel. Rocket Money does it for you. No more long hold times or dealing with customer service or the tedious emailing back and forth. Super simple. Over 3 million people use it, and they save on average $720 a year. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. That's rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. One more time, rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. Crossover time. These two teams somehow haven't played yet this year. Thunder, Pacers, tonight in OKC. What would have been, for me, a circle on the calendar, most improved player betting line, awesome game between Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Tyrese Haliburton is not that, but it will still be awesome. For those of you on Locked On Thunder, I'm Tony East from Locked On Pacers, and this is Rylan Stiles. I'll let you introduce yourself from Locked On Thunder. Rylan, the Thunder are so fun this year.
They are so fun. I'm Rylan Stiles, host of Locked On Thunder, and it's been awesome to watch Shai and to watch, of course, Tyrese Haliburton, also for the Pacers, ascend to where they're at right now. And you're right. It really, really stinks that Tyrese Haliburton is out for this game. I was devastated when I heard the news that he would not be in Oklahoma City on Wednesday. But nonetheless, I still think this is going to be a really fun game. And I still think that it'll be a track meet, which is always fun. Two teams that play with a ton of pace. Whenever they get together, and it's not like a boring, methodical game, I find those more interesting as well. The Thunder returning home from their most impressive road trip in years, where they get 3 wins on the road, could have had 4, lost to Miami by 1 point to not sweep the road trip, including a win over Philadelphia and Brooklyn, to where hopefully that the crowd is kind of behind them, and hopefully the crowd is more packed than it's been all year long to kind of welcome them home. That will be a ton of fun as well. So I think it'll be a fun time on Wednesday in OKC.
It does look like it's going to be fun, even though the Pacers have quietly lost 4 out of 5, while the Thunder have won. The Oklahoma City Thunder, for those unaware, have won 6 out of 7. The Thunder are here-ish. I mean, they're beating good teams. They're playing very well. And that's what made this game interesting to me at first, is the Thunder would be good and it would be fun. And both of these teams are top, 6 in pace, with the Pacers being 6th. So, yes, you're right. It's going to be a track meet. But Shai is still the show, even with Tyrese out. He's been so good. I had a Locked On NBA opportunity to host this season, and I had you on to talk about Shai. But look, he might be the most improved player favorite. What has made him so much better this year? And what has slowed him down? Do the Pacers have any prayer of actually giving him any sort of fit?
So the thing with Shai that slowed him down this year has been 2 things that I'm not sure that repeatable for other teams. It's been Memphis's length. The Memphis has so many bodies that are 6'7" plus that they can just throw in the paint. And what do you do for a guy who his entire offense is centered around getting to the rim? That's been very hard for him. And Miami's zone. And it's specifically Miami's zone, which is so crisp, and they work on it so much. When other teams try to throw a zone that they're not used to running, it's easier to exploit. But Miami's zone in 2 games have caused 11 turnovers for Shai. And while he still gets to those high water marks of 28 points, 30 points, it's not as efficient as normal for Shai. Plus, when you throw the turnovers in, it's obviously not a normal Shai game. So it's been those 2 aspects of defense that have slowed him down. And again, I'm not sure how repeatable it is, given that you can't really build a team the way Memphis is. You can't really build a lengthy defensive monstrous team overnight, and you can't implement a zone as crisp as Miami runs it overnight either. So that's where it's very encouraging for Thunder fans to see that this play on the floor is sustainable for Shai, because it's very tough to guard. And also, it's only going to get better as you surround him with better shooters, because if you look at his numbers with Isaiah Joe on the floor, Isaiah Joe being the only true knockdown 3-point shooter the Thunder have, they go up exponentially, because you now have to pay attention to somebody outside the arc, which unclogs the paint in the mid-range, which is where Shai makes his bread and butter. So, yeah, I don't really see a way for Indiana to slow down SGA, just based upon the fact that no one's been able to yet, besides those 2 teams, and that's kind of where the Thunder sit right now.
Yeah, that he is no one could stop him getting to the rim, and the Pacers don't they play small already. Neesmith will get some time on him, I would guess, as will Andrew Nembhard, and neither of them have length. And so Miles Turner can do some. I mean, all season he's protected the rim and deterred guys. But there's a point with Shai where he's so crafty around the rim and he can kick out that all of a sudden that doesn't necessarily work so well. And Isaiah Joe is lights out. I was DMing with someone the other day about players around the league, and he asked me if I knew the 7 guys who met the criteria, who have played 30 plus games, are shooting 40% or better from 3 and take 10 or more threes per 100 possessions. And I got all of them except Isaiah Joe. I did not realize he was that dude this year from deep, and that has really helped the Thunder be a much more capable shooting team. 17th now in 3-point percentage this year. Yeah, I think that is where this game will be tricky for the Pacers, is they don't have the stuff to cover Shai, right? They're kind of praying that the stuff he does to get other guys involved, to make other guys' lives easier, right, Can they slow Lou Dort? Can they slow Jalen Williams? J-Dub, excuse me. Can they make Giddey, who's been playing very well recently, have a little bit harder of a night because they don't have the answers for Shea. Those quick, shifty guards have been tough for them all year and, quite frankly, for lots of years. And Miles Turner can do a lot to bail that stuff out. But that's where I think the Thunder will get a big advantage. That said, the Pacers did figure some stuff out against Milwaukee on Monday. 18 threes. Offense looked much better. A little unsustainable TJ McConnell MVP candidate game. That will likely not be happening again in Oklahoma City. But I think they can score pretty well, even with Halliburton out. They'll just have to do it for a consistent game. But the Thunder quietly, basically a top 10 defense. Do you have any concerns that the Pacers could break them down and make this interesting?
I do. I think that with a top 10 defense for the Thunder this year, that's been all fantastic for OKC. My big concern is, which it's quietly been a repeat of last year, by the way, for the Thunder defense. Like last year at this time, they were a top 10 defense, but with the maneuvers that they did at the end of the season where they're playing 10-day guys for like 20 games, it tanked the entire stats and proponents of all this. But nonetheless, this season, what I think worries me the most is the lack of a true center threat right now, with Jeremiah Robinson-Earl out, with Aleksej Pokusevski out, with Chet Holmgren out. Right now, you're looking at Mike Muscala and Jalen Williams out of Arkansas, who are the true center builds. And for Jalen Williams out of Arkansas, his big deal has been, he's played really good in drop coverage, but he's a young player and he's playing a bit undersized at the big man position. And so that's led to a ton of foul trouble. Like there's been times where he gets 4 fouls and a half. And if you get in foul trouble with Miles Turner on the floor, which is likely going to be a guy that can draw fouls out of Jay Will, then that takes him out of play. Now you're down to just one true center, Mike Muscala, who you're not leaning a ton of time on. You're not playing him 30 minutes a night or 25 minutes a night. So there's going to be a lot of moments here, especially if they get Jay Will in foul trouble, where Miles Turner is going to go up against Kenny Hustle, like Kenrich Williams, like that. That is going to be where Kenrich Williams has been good playing the small ball 5, in terms of minutes this year. That's still not an invitation matchup for OKC. Like you're still playing from behind in that matchup. And so I think that with TJ McConnell and these guards, while they like to play a pace, if they can kind of go in the half court and do the pick and roll stuff over and over and over again, eventually it could break down OKC because of the lack of a true center threat. And with the Thunder, to make up for that lack of a center threat, they've been really cheating on collapsing in the paint and going, and kind of shoveling everything down low to where they're susceptible to corner threes. Like the corner threes have been open a lot this year on those kickouts because they're trying to overcorrect and overhelp down low. With Buddy Hield and with the shooters that the Pacers can have on the floor, that also can give the Pacers an edge as well offensively.
Yeah, Nesmith, Jalen Smith, those guys who end up in the corner a lot for the Pacers will be pretty important in this game. I think they did well enough to get good threes against Milwaukee, and that kept them in it, even though Milwaukee made 23 threes. But yeah, that's going to be important against the way the Thunder like to play defensively. Rylan, I empathize with you because during 2020-21, I covered the Pacers when they had TJ Leaf, TJ Warren, and TJ McConnell. So I just had to say the last name, right? It was easy. Everybody could figure out which TJ I was talking about. You have to literally say Jalen Williams from Arkansas and Jalen Williams from Santa Clara to specify. They're both rookies and they both play. How have you dealt with this? Like that?
Well, yeah. So like in OKC, it's been J-Dub and J-Will. And even that has confused some Thunder fans. But the Thunder themselves, when they're at practice and at shoot around and talking to each other, J-Dub means Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara. Jay Will means Jalen Williams out of Arkansas. But when you're on a podcast like this, where you got Pacers fans for half the audience, that would just confuse the heck out of them. Why is he having 2 different nicknames for one player? No, they're 2 different players, and they go by 2 different things. But it's been fantastic. And I don't know if you saw, but at draft night, Jay Will, Arkansas, he had his family in this convention hall, basketball arena, whatever. They're watching the draft on television, and the commissioner, of course, says with the 12th pick, the Thunder are selecting Jalen Williams, and his whole family starts erupting with the applause and cheers, and Jay Will standing there going, no, this isn't me, this is not me. But eventually he does get picked and is picked by the Thunder, which is just an incredible story. But yeah,
keep the audio.
It's wild.
They can still keep that audio of him going number 12, even though he actually didn't. Yeah, this game, I think if Halliburton played, this one would have been really interesting, right? They're very similar in net rating. Their records are now pretty close because the Pacers have lost 4 in a row. I think without Halliburton, the Thunder have the best player. They're definitely in better form. I think the Pacers can win. They've showed like 35 to 40 minutes of good play against Memphis and Milwaukee their last 2 games, but not 48. And I think they will get closer to 48, but I don't think they're better than the Thunder right now. So I don't know what you think, but I think the matchup inside can go the Pacers' way. Turner just had 30. 2 nights ago, and I think they can get an advantage there. But unless they can knock down those corner threes or really make the young but still effective Thunder defense spread it out, I think Shea is more consistent in the way he breaks down a defense, is more consistent in the way that I think the Pacers will have a little bit more trouble keeping up in this one.
Yeah, I think that on paper, the Thunder should win this game, and it's especially critical for the Thunder because they're going to head west after this game and go to Sacramento and go to Denver, 2 tough places to play, where if you stumble in this one, you might not win a game all week, which would be kind of a blow after all the momentum you've gained this past week. But I will say that the difference here would be the 2 days off. You kind of ask rust versus rest in that case, and you're kind of feeling yourself a bit for the first time. This is the first time a young team in OKC has been able to say, hey, we're right there in the standings. We've kind of arrived a little bit. Do you start reading the press clippings and looking ahead and checking the standings and things of that nature? I will say for the Pacers fans, though, if you gain an early lead in this game, don't rest on your laurels, because the Thunder have been incredible at coming back. They lead the NBA in 15-plus point comebacks, and their best quarter is the third quarter. So you might dominate all the first half, which has been typical, especially early on this season. The Thunder then come in the third quarter and clean up and come back in this game and then close it out with Shea in the fourth. So I think it'll be a fun game regardless. I think that this will not be a blowout by any nature. I think that the Thunder will eventually run away with it in the fourth quarter, but attract me up and down the floor, and a lot of fun offense I think will happen in this game against the Pacers.
I don't know if you have the 15-plus point comebacks thing in front of you, but the Pacers have got to be top 10 in that as well. I mean, you described with Haliburton playing kind of how they've played all year. Bad start, figure it out in the second, adjust in the third, win in the fourth. Like, that's how they've been. That has not been the case since he got injured. Rylan, as you know, as I briefed you before, let's talk about some team building. The Thunder are a fascinating team to talk team building with, but the Pacers entered what they defined as a new era before the season started. Their young core is 22 and 20 years old right now, and yet they're over 500. And team building is an interesting thing to talk about with smaller market teams. As you know, let's do that after we tell everybody about BetOnline.net, the #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, including the ongoing pro football playoffs. They've got basketball on there, everything you want over at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, they're over at BetOnline as well. The lines are up for the NFL second round of the playoffs. Eagles-Giants should be juicy. Eagles favored by 7.5. Bills favored by 5 against Cincinnati. Why are the Bills the home team when, had they lost in Cincinnati, that game would be played in Cincinnati? I don't know, but that is what the NFL has decided. All those lines and more at BetOnline.net, the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to that website today or use your mobile device to learn more, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Back here on Locked On Pacers and Locked On Thunder. Thanks for making either one of us your first listen today and every single day. Jump on over to NBA Game to Game for your second listen today to get the take from the local experts on every game in the NBA every single night here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Easily the best way to catch up on all the action from around the league in a bite-sized, shorter podcast. It's fantastic. And Rylan and I will be on there on Thursday talking our own perspectives of Pacers Thunder. But forget the game for a second. Look, both of these teams are ascending in the play-in mix. Thunder were in it yesterday. They're not right now as we're talking, but whatever. It's because someone else won. It's not because they lost. Pacers are in it, but who knows where their season will go until Haliburton returns. Either way, two surging teams, but they still have work to do building. And what I thought would be the case for the Pacers this season, and the prevailing thought for the Thunder as well, is that they would be, 12 in their conference, 13th in their conference, and have some work to do building. So I thought that I would discuss team building with every Locked On host and figure out what they did well. Is it possible to copy for other teams what they did poorly? Is it possible to avoid that? And can the Pacers, or Thunder in this case, implement it themselves? So as vague as possible, Rylan Stiles, what did the Thunder do well to build their team, and is it replicatable? That said, before you answer, I very much know that their situation is one of the most unique since the process. But please, the floor is yours.
Well, it starts with fleecing the Clippers. You got to fleece the Clippers and gain $1 billion first-round picks while also gaining a #1 overall player in SGA who can lead your franchise and be a 30-point-per-game scorer. That itself, not sure how duplicable it is, although if you ask the Jazz, they did it pretty well with Minnesota. So maybe it is going to be something that you can duplicate over and over and over again. But it's interesting that the conversation around the Thunder team building, they've been talked about and talked down to of black eye of the league, egregious tanking, unbelievable, disgusting acts by the Thunder to just tank. Sam Presti cares more about first-round picks and middle schoolers than he does about winning games. Well, a few things are true. The Thunder did trade Paul George and Russell Westbrook way back in 2019. However, they did make the playoffs the following year with Chris Paul and SGA and Gallinari. And
I will interrupt you for a second to say the Thunder have played a playoff game more recently than the Pacers. Okay, continue.
Yes, they have. And more recently than a lot of teams in the NBA have, by the way, including the Hornets and the Rockets and every other tanking team that they hold up as a better tanking team than the Thunder. But they made the playoffs. They went to 7 and should have won the game in game 7, but they got blocked. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay. They've never finished with a bottom 3 record in the NBA. In fact, they've tied for the 4th worst, so weren't even an outright 4th worst. They just won a coin flip. And they finished 4th worst last year as well, but never finished bottom 3. They might, depending on how the season goes, have only a 2-year hiatus from the playoffs. And so with all of that being said, I don't see how people can continuously say that Sam Presti and the Thunder did these egregious tanking moves and these egregious black eye of the league stuff that people throw out there during this whole rebuild. The Thunder got lucky in the lottery 1 year and unlucky the other year. Like the first year in the lottery, they got unlucky, quote unquote, by dropping out of 6. They had to take Josh Giddey. That's obviously panned out, of course, over these last 20 games, especially. And then last year they got lucky. They leaped from 4 to 2. They get Chet Holmgren. He's not playing right now, but you're going to add him to the mix of this already fun young team next season. And then they cashed in some of their chips, which people like to admit whenever they're talking about Sam Presti as a pick compiler. They cashed in 3 future first-round picks to go up and buy Ousmane Dieng with the 11th overall pick, and then still drafted J-Dub with the 12th overall pick the next time. So the Thunder have really done this all on drafting and done this all on rebuilding, and not even to the most egregious extent that they could have. And this season, whenever John Hollinger predicts that they're going to win 20 games, which would have been 4 less games than they won the year prior, they've already gotten that mark at the halfway point of the season. So the Thunder have outperformed, I think, what a lot of people expected from them in the last 3 years, and especially this year, but they're doing it with a clear identity. And I'm not to say that the Thunder have the correct identity in terms of like it's the only way to do it, but it's clear that whenever you watch the Thunder and watch the Rockets, they're both rebuilding teams, but one has a plan and one doesn't. The Thunder have a plan top to bottom. Like they have a plan on the floor. They have a plan off the floor as well, though. They're drafting these versatile playmakers who can – their goal is to have positionless basketball where every single player can grab a rebound and push the pace and be a playmaker. Their goal is to have every single player can switch 1 through 5. It's why you saw SGA shut down Franz Wagner at the end of the Magic game in OKC back on November 1st and help the Thunder win that game, because he could switch on to a 4 and know exactly how to defend him in a critical moment. And so their goal is just length, size, athleticism, but also now playmaking ability, finishing ability, and hopefully they gain more shooting ability. As you mentioned, the Thunder are still at 17, but that might hit the ear funny for like other fans to say that's a good year for the Thunder. They're usually bottom 2, usually 30th in the league. And so one off season with Chip England and one off season of progression has helped this Thunder team get to 17. They're going to continue to progress as the youngest team in NBA history, second youngest team in NBA history, only ahead of last year's Thunder team, second youngest team in NBA history. And so they're going to continue to improve. But for the Thunder, their model has been forming an identity. And it doesn't have to be the Thunder's identity, but I think that you do need an identity that you're looking for in a player. You can't just willy-nilly pick guys and willy-nilly grab people and push them together like other teams are doing. You have to have a clear message of what you want everyone to be able to do on the floor and what you want your structure to be. And that structure has led to better success earlier for the Thunder. I think that Jalen Green is a great player. I think that Alperen Sengun is a great player. But I think that what the Rockets are doing, and Jabari Smith, I had a number 1 on my big board. I think Jabari Smith's a great player. But when you're just standing around and playing isolation ball with guys that aren't ready to do that yet, none of them are going to be able to succeed at a high rate. And so it's not to continue to throw shots at the Rockets, but it's just showing that what the Thunder have done hasn't been some big secret. It's just been sticking to a plan, executing that plan, and letting the chips fall where they may. Like they didn't plan to be a playoff team this year, but their plan, it got accelerated with just internal development. So I think that the biggest issue here, to end my ramble, is when you're rebuilding, have a plan and have a identity already in your mind. Don't wait and make an identity halfway through these guys' careers and ask them to conform to your new plan. Draft guys who already fit that plan or you can envision fitting that plan.
The Pacers are following a lot of those Thunder ideologies, ironically. They got a great young guard in a trade last year in Tyrese Halliburton, and they said, okay, our new identity with this guy running our show is we're going to play fast and we're going to play in transition, and if you can't do that, well, too bad. And then all offseason they said, hey, we want to add guys who are athletes and we want to add shooters, and every team forever in the offseason says we want to play faster and we want to shoot better. Like, I hear but they did it this time. After years of saying it, they did it. And so now I think their next step to potentially copying a successful Thunder rebuild and being better is drafting guys or adding guys who add to that identity. And they have 4 top, potentially, if the Rockets finish with a bottom 2 record, they have this weird second rounder with a bunch of crazy protections. I'm not going to talk about that, but they could have 4 top 32 picks. The Pacers can't even fit 4 young guys onto their team. Like, the Thunder have had to dance around that kind of crap for forever, as you know. So I don't know what they're going to exactly do with all that, but to a much lighter scale, they have drafted well, right? Nailed the Mathurin pick, nailed the Nembhard pick. Duarte's good. They have formed an identity. They got the bang and trade. They have way less picks, so the Thunder are definitely set up better long term. But a lot of the stuff the Thunder did well, the Pacers are in the process of doing. Something else the Thunder did well, for my seat, if you don't mind. This is not a shot at any other coach in the NBA, but Mark Daigneault is awesome, right? And he really fits with what they want to do. And having the right coach for your plan is really helpful. And Carlisle normally is considered by many around the league a guy who like is great in winning situations, but he loves teaching moments, which he gets a lot of with these younger teams. And he loves this identity that they currently play. And so he is actually a very good coach for the way the Pacers want to play. So ironically, I didn't even think we'd get to this point in this discussion, but Pacers and Thunder, similar-ish on the building path. And in the small market, hey, it's working. The hard step is the final steps for these kind of teams, right? Getting all of the pieces together. We'll see where that ends up. But yeah, the Pacers have been good at trades forever. Kevin Pritchard's best quality, I think, is his ability to find talent that's young and under contract for a long time and fits with what they want to do and get it onto his team. And I think that's where the Pacers' next kind of steps are. And I don't know what the Thunder are thinking, but I'd imagine if, they're doing 3-for-1 draft trades to get Osman Jang, that they're going to be close to that next year. So I think it's fascinating the parallels that exist between the Pacers and Thunder's team building strategies, even though the Thunder have done it on a much grander and potentially sooner, more successful level.
Yeah, I think that for the Thunder, your this offseason, I don't think will be as exciting as like blockbuster moves, but it's coming. I think that this offseason, you're going to let Bazley's contract expire, and that opens up a roster spot for your first round pick this year.
Ooh,
which the Thunder only have one.
Wow, an athletic 4. I think the Pacers will be calling some Bazley representatives potentially. That is not a source thing. That's a good fit. Anyway,
he's on the block right now, on the trade block, if they want to plunk him a bit early. But nonetheless, I think that he's not in the future plans for the Thunder, if I had to guess. And so you let his contract expire. He's really the only player on this roster that you are comfortable getting rid of right now. Then his spot is taken up by the only first-round pick that the Thunder have this year. They only have 1 this season, despite the gluttony of first-round picks that they have in the future. They have 4 next season. So if they wanted to, they could still buy another first-round pick, as they did last year with the Usman Jang trade. But I think that this year, you bring in that first-round pick, you bring back Chet Holmgren this offseason, and then next year you see where that's all at and see how Chet Holmgren plays in the NBA, what would be best to put around Chet Holmgren, because he's a player where even if he pans out, you're going to have to just see what the vibe is in the NBA landscape to know who to pair with him. Because the worst thing to do would be to try to pair somebody with him this offseason without knowing any of that information. And then it's a bad pairing and you've kind of derailed this whole thing. So that's why patience, even despite this huge surge, and even despite if they make the playoffs or not in a couple of months, I think will be a big deal for the Thunder. And so they're going to get a good draft pick. And even if they make the playoffs and finish 16th, they can trade the 16th pick plus future picks and get up to 8 or whatever they want to get right back in that range where they would have been had they been losing these games. So it's a win-win all around for the Thunder. But this offseason might not be as flashy, but that flashy stuff is coming because it just simply has to. They cannot draft 4 guys in 24's draft. So they're going to have to trade those picks for something of note, either this offseason or next offseason or in the middle of the next season, whenever that case is.
Similar timeline here, right? Pacers can't draft that many guys. And in 2 years, they pay Tyrese Haliburton. In 3 years, they pay Benedict Mather. And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, here's our team, right? How do you get around and build around those guys on their rookie skill deals? Rylan, this was fun. It's fun to compare and contrast the situations of young teams. And this game will be a blast. And I'm sure we'll both be breaking down these games on our respective shows tomorrow. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
On Locked On Pacers tomorrow, all the Pacers Thunder recap you could want and other general topics based on who plays well or poorly in that game. Thank everybody a ton for listening here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. See you tomorrow.